We'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which this podcast was produced, the Gadigal People of the Eora Nation. We pay our respects to elders past and present.
Just a warning that Osher's story contains discussions of mental ill health and addiction. If this episode raises any issues for you, support is available through the links and phone numbers in our show notes.
It's November 2006 and we're in the wings of the Sydney Opera House. Andrew G is about to take the stage to host Australian Idol's grand finale. The lights are bright, the stakes are high, the pressure is on. 1 in 4 Australian households will tune in to watch him do his thing. This is his happy place, the place where he feels most in control. But when the lights go down and he gets off stage, he won't feel so in control. In fact, he's fighting for his life. His career has become his coping mechanism for his battle with OCD, drugs and alcohol. Now, as Osher Günsberg, he sits in front of me a completely different person. A new name, a new approach to life. I'm at Middleton and this is Head Game. Today, beloved TV host, podcaster and mental health advocate Osher Günsberg on making a life worth living. Osher Günsberg, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on my podcast, Head Game.
I'm glad I can be here, mate.
So just take me back to your childhood and who you were, who you thought you were. Did you have a good upbringing? What your parents were like? Because this podcast is about you, and we want to get to know the nitty gritty.
I could answer that question in 49 minutes, and then you'd be done.
No, don't.
But I'll tell you the short version is you're a military man with a military background, so you know what I'm talking about when I tell you that I'm one of 4 boys. I'm number 2 of 4 boys. And I was raised by 2 people who know what it is to have authoritarian regimes kick your door in and people with machine guns say, this is ours now. And that happened to my mum when she was just a bit younger than my son, to be honest. She was about 3. They fled Lithuania with the retreating German army because we all know how terrible that was, and parts of the Holocaust, the real grim kind of hand-to-hand brutal massacres happened before they mechanised it. That happened there. And they knew how bad those guys were. But when they found out the Russians were coming back, they're like, oh, fuck, let's get out of here. It was like, that's bad. Some 24 years later, the same Russians stormed tanks through my dad's city of Prague. And he'd look at that and went, well, I better go. And so he was 24 when that happened. And so both my parents had that. They're both doctors, but they both had this idea of, it can all get taken away. And, a different relationship to authority than some people probably would have had. And but most definitely an awareness of, it's lovely here in Australia. Yeah. And there's parts of the world, like in our lifetimes, it's kind of not been that way. Now, so these people, that's what they, that's what they grew up with, and that's, who they were, and they coped with.
And could you sense that as a child growing up, or did you learn that later, or could you sense that in the
Definitely
family?
Knew that about my dad. Dad talked about it a lot. He lost family in the Holocaust, and he was rightly, quite really making sure that us kids knew what it was about. Mum didn't talk about it so much until they'd split up. It was once Dad had left that Mum started opening up about the things that happened to her and her journey. Like they walked from Kaunas down to northern Germany in the middle of winter. They walked.
Cool.
And wildly, I like to talk about this. When her and her family got to Australia, on the top of the form, and I've seen the form, it says DP, displaced persons. They were persons displaced by war. They weren't refugees. They weren't queue jumpers. They weren't asylum seekers. They were people. They were persons who had been displaced through no fault of their own. But look, as far as how I was a jumpy kid, I was 5, I think, when my parents sent me off to a psychiatrist. I think it was one in Brisbane at the time, in the late 70s. And I just remember anxiety being this all-encompassing thing that would just overtake me, and I was unable to escape it. And was
Wow.
terrifying.
So quickly, Osher. So you were set off. You had a psychiatrist at the age of
5. Like, what's going on
5.
with a kid
Wow.
that they get sent to a psychiatrist at 5? So I don't know.
Because nowadays, that's sort of like, we hear about it a lot more nowadays,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's more highly accepted now. How was that perceived back when you were 5 to how it's perceived now?
I grew up in, I don't know how much you know about Australian local politics, but I grew up in Joe Biolchi's Queensland. So the fact that my last name was Günsberg was enough. It didn't need too much more topping on top of that cake. It was a pretty weird place, man. Pretty strange place. But yeah, I remember it was really weird, and I was always kind of afraid of people and afraid of strangers, and to kind of I found it a bit of a salve for that. Because what's anxiety for me at the time? Anxiety was a sense of lack of control, and when am I more in control than when I'm on stage? I was 8, I think. We were doing a sketch at school. We went to the kind of school where every Friday there'd be an assembly and you had to do a skit on, like, I don't know, picking up rubbish or, whatever you're doing, don't masturbate because Jesus is always watching you. It was that kind of school. And we did the sketch, and I had to walk out there and do the line. And don't worry, it was about picking up rubbish. And I think I walked out and everyone was quiet and they're all staring at me. It's like 300 kids all looking at me with faces like koi carp, right? And I think the line was something along the lines of, don't commit a sin, put it in the bin. The indoctrination was deep, but it was like that. And I got a laugh, and the koi carp just started, and they all just, and that was really truly the kind of the first high that I ever got, because here I am on stage. Oh yeah, because now bear in mind, I was 8. I was also in Weight Watchers at 8 because my tummy felt, it was the anxiety to make my feeling go away, this awful feeling inside my body. I would put things in my tummy, and I was just quite like, what's going on with a kid? They get taken to Weight Watchers when they're 8, which later on I found out is very much like a 12-step for fatties. I went through various stages of not great mental health and various, that kind of coupled with not a lot of great fitness and stuff like that, but I always found a great amount of respite and relief in performing. And because there was this beautiful sense of, I don't think I was just able to kind of communicate, I think, in a different way.
Express yourself, right?
Yeah. And there was, I'm not going to lie, there was a sense of control. My coping mechanism eventually became my career, but I did come to a point where I had to reassess that. And it's very different now. But like if I think back to some of the biggest things I've ever done, right, millions of people down the camera lens, literally coast to coast live across America, that just absolute serenity, complete calm. When I think about those moments, if I said to someone, I'll picture yourself speaking in front of 100 people. Now speaking yourself speaking to 800 people. Now those 800 people are in a TV studio and there's 12 cameras in there, and at the end of every one of those cameras is a person, except there's 10 million of them. How do you feel? They probably shit themselves. For me, it's like, unreal. Yeah. I'm ready. Let's go.
Would you say from that moment onwards, from the age of 8, did you not have knowing what you wanted to do, but you say you felt hugely in control? It was the start of.
I knew what I wanted. I knew that it was always going to be something to do with performing. I think my mum came in at the age of 5. I grew up in Brisbane, which again, it was a big cow town run by a premier who was essentially, it was like a fiefdom, and I'm standing on the coffee table, and we only had 3 TV channels, and most of them the whole day long was the Test Pattern, which was a great show. Went all day, never cancelled it, and they played classical music underneath it. And Mum came in one day and she found me standing on the coffee table conducting the classical music on the telly. Yeah. There was just something about connecting with other people who are performing and without words, doing this thing together to get an emotional response. I know that now as an adult, but there was just something about it that I just loved. Mm-hmm. Coupled that with a sense of, I know what's going to happen. If I'm up here for at least for the next 12 minutes, I know what's going to happen, so I'm just calm. That's the sort of thing that kind of pushed me to want to get better at singing and playing guitar and playing piano and acting and whatever else I was doing, to buy me that stage time, to get me that feeling.
And that feeling was pure, I am in control, or was it just like, this is giving me a buzz, this is making me feel alive? What was that feeling?
And this part I still relate to. Like I don't do my job for this anymore, but it's nice when it happens. When I don't know which High School Musicals you were in, Ant, but when you're standing on stage and you're trying to remember your lines and you're trying to remember the song and the harmony, which isn't the melody, so don't fuck it up, and you're trying to remember where you have to stand and who have you got to go, and there's the person there, and you're trying to remember to make sure you stand in the light and not in the shadow, there really isn't any room left in your brain for which is the barrage of noise that goes on in my head most of the time. So when I'm that focused, all that stuff goes away, and it's just really lovely.
Yeah, no, I can relate to that, because you're so focused on what you need to do that all the noise, distractions, where ultimately that's quite rare, because normally it's the flip side, right? Normally people get up and it's the noise, it's the distractions that really break them down and stop them from performing. Where you were just so hyper focused on what you needed to do. It silenced all the exterior.
I was very lucky.
Nonsense.
I was very lucky to have that. But there's the same thing goes, if I'm doing a show like, it's not on air at the moment, probably won't ever be again, but a show called The Masked Singer. It's a very silly show, but
I know it well.
I walk out and there's 20 dancers. I'm wearing this helmet that looks like I'm in Daft Punk. It's all LEDs. I can't actually see out of it. So I just have to count my steps and remember I'm walking in a straight line. Walk 6 steps forward. Don't walk 7, because right there on that beat, there's going to be propane cannons going across in front of me. So don't stand there. But then when the music continues, take 4 steps forward, because now you need to be that point. You can still smell the fumes in the air. Flip the mic without looking. Take the helmet off. Remember all the dance moves. There's 14 cameras in the room. Da-da-da-da-da-da. Now, I've got a brain that goes, no problem. I'm fine. And it's just like the ding of a bell at the end of Savasana in the yoga class. That's what it feels like. But when I don't have that amount going on, it can be a challenge still. But I actually work these days. I work quite hard to make sure those noisy bits have something to do. Which is that
when the self-doubt kicks in? Is that when the habits, the temptation kicks in? Is when you're not in those moments, because you're it sounds like pretty much like me. When I'm sat twiddling my thumbs, that's when I get myself in a bit of
idle
trouble,
hands, mate. Idle hands.
Idle hands. That's it.
No, self-doubt. Self-doubt's a bit more. I don't know about that. I think no, it was never really that. I think there's an element. I don't know if it's hubris, where I just believed, and I think there's got to be an element of it to anybody that says, I am a songwriter, or I am an author, or I am the one soldier who's going to go and make a massive TV show about soldiering and don't give a fuck what any of those hardheads are going to say to me. You're all grunts. Here I am winning the Logie. Fuck you. There's something about you that goes, yes, I am going to do this, and here I go. And that's you. I don't think you can achieve those things in life if you allow that self-doubt to make your decisions. You kind of make those bold moves because you are willing to be with the criticism and with the critique, because otherwise you'd never leave the house. You wouldn't go, no, desk job for me, thank you. No, that's never been. I don't work with anybody like that. Camera guys, sound guys, anybody. Everyone's like, yep, I'm going to not pursue a career that's solid and has a regular income to support my family. I'm going to swing a boom, and these guys work. There's got to be something about. Certainly in a seasonal industry like mine, you got to have some amount of confidence or belief in yourself.
When was your big break? Because you go through, you realize that you want to be on stage. This is where you come alive. This is where you're in complete control. Where did it all start, and how did you get your big break?
I always knew I was going to do it. I always had this idea that this is where I was going to go. I played in a lot of bands. I always played music. I still do. And I just knew that there was something, I had something more to give than what was there. And I was a roadie for a long time, and I was lugging road cases up and down flights of stairs at 3 a.m. in the blistering
Humble
Queensland.
beginnings, mate.
Oh, it was awful. I did that for it was fun, but I learned a lot. I learned a lot doing that. I think it's really important to do a hard physical job when you're like 17, 18, 19. So you spend the rest of your life going, I'm going to do everything I can never to do that again. Because I've got 2 hernias and hearing damage out of it. I wear hearing aids now because my ears are fucked. But when I was doing that, I started playing in bands quite regularly. And then I was like, there's got to be something. There's more. I've got more to give than what's here. And so I just sat down and I wrote handwritten letters to all the radio stations in Brisbane and said, I don't care what it is. I just want to be around it. I'll come do anything. I'll turn a light bulb on. I don't give a shit. And one of the people that worked at the radio station, B105, he used to be the bar manager at one of the places that I would lug in and lug out of on a Tuesday, and I used to go get the keys off of him to open the loading dock. And he's like, I know that guy. Get him in here. And that was it. I got my first overnight shift like 8 weeks later. So I was just giving out the icicle cans for a while. And pretty soon I was doing the overnights. And so these jobs don't exist anymore, which is a real drag, because I think the great fallacy that people think is that you can go from, I'm interested in doing this, to 1 million downloads. I'm like, no, you're going to have to be prepared to be shit for quite a while and understand that you're not going to get it straight away. And flight miles really, truly is the only way that you can get something in until it's automatic. You absolutely, I don't know how many times you've disassembled and reassembled a rifle, mate, but if you have to think about it, you're going to have to do it again. You have to be able to do it while counting a deck of cards, right? And then do it perfectly, because your hands just have to know what to do instinctively. And then there's a skill to broadcasting. There's a way to, truncate the things you want to say, cadence of your voice, operating all the buttons, all that kind of shit. And so I did 5 years of between midnight and 6. I was on air playing fucking Celine Dion and Bryan Adams and Third Eye Blind and all kinds of other 90s stuff. And then I was like, I'm never going to get a job in the daytime unless one of the daytime jocks dies. So I started sending tapes around to different stations around the country, and the guys in Adelaide were like, oh yeah, let's why don't you come down? And so I got a job in the daytime, and my girlfriend, it was at the time, we're not together anymore, it was years ago, I left her, I left my family, I left my friends, I left everything, and I just got on a plane and went to Adelaide, and I said, I've just got to go. And as I left,
were you following, you were just following that career, or were you following your gut? Or did you just feel
all gut. It was I just knew I had to do this thing. I couldn't put words into it. Like, what is follow your gut? Follow your gut is, and what is intuition? It is simply a subconscious reflection of something that you've already seen or experienced or you understand, but you may not be able to put into words. That is all intuition is. You don't have some sort of divinity put through you. It's just your subconscious is able to make decisions quicker than you can think about it cognitively, right? This stuff happens automatically. And I was just like, I have to go. And so I got there, and within about a month, I was like, oh, fucking hell. I'm in Adelaide. This is a weird town on the edge of a desert. Like, the whole Snowtown thing was going on at that time. I was like, this is fucking strange here. And when I was leaving Brisbane, Daryl is an amazing audio operator. As I left, he said, you'll be in Sydney within 6 months. I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? I don't even know when I'm going to be in 6 weeks. I just know I have to go now. I just got to go. And look, mate, sure enough, about a month later, I was like, I've got to get out of here. It's not big enough. I've got to go. I've got to get bigger than this. And so, because I'd just been to Europe, right, and for the first time as an adult, and, I was like, oh my God, the world's bigger than Brisbane? Wow. And so it was January. There was an old TV show here called Recovery. It was on Saturday mornings. I don't do that anymore. And I got an email from the same guy who'd now moved to Sydney and was working at a cable network down there. And he said, one of the hosts of the Afternoon Request show has just left. You should send him a tape. And I was like, well, if I'm going to make a tape for that show who was asking about presenters, I'll send Daryl one as well. And so I rode my skateboard. I found the tape the other day, and I rode my skateboard around the beach in Adelaide, and walked through the park, and I did this whole pitch, and I posted it, and that was it. But 2 weeks later, I was on a plane to Sydney for an interview. And here's the thing, because I worked at the radio station, and I wouldn't want to tell them. I would have been in breach of contract, right? So, good night, everybody. See you later, guys. Good night. get in my Kingswood, fang to the Adelaide airport, get on the plane, fly to Sydney, which is like 2.5 hours, land, get a cab to the restaurant, meet the boss, have a chat for a couple of hours, get back to the, sleep at my brother's house for a couple of hours, then go back to the airport, get back to Adelaide, first flight out, rolling at 9:15. Sorry, I'm a bit late, guys. How are you? Good? I did that about 2 or 3 times, and then they said, yeah, you got the job. And I went in and resigned, and my boss kicked me in the shins twice. And then I was doing live TV every afternoon. We were making 3 hours of television 5 days a week. So we're making 15 hours of live TV every day. So by the time Idol came up, I've been doing this 6 days a week for 9 years.
This is why we're on this podcast, mate, because it's people don't realise, they see the tip of the iceberg, and I use that metaphor, everything that goes on underneath, from your sleepless nights, to you travelling around the country, to you putting, being present, as in putting out applications, taking opportunities. It's like people don't appreciate the amount of effort, work, sacrifice, right? You talk about, your girlfriend, I'm off. See, the personal sacrifice that it takes in order to be that committed to what, to follow what your gut was telling you.
But that's the thing. It took 9 years of being kind of shit and just working really hard at getting better and having my ego belted to the ground by my bosses, who were like, you could be so much better than this. Just stop fucking yelling or speak slower. And me not being such an idiot, not wanting to be told what to do, but eventually realizing, if they tell me what to do, it'll be all right. But I did, honestly, and I squandered a lot of it, man, because I didn't know, once I got to Sydney, I didn't know how to handle what was happening, because once we got on that really big show, man, things went fucking crazy, man. And
let's talk about that, mate. So how did that go? So you've done 9 years.
Yeah.
You just got up there and just from the off, like you had been doing.
Oh yeah, but here's the thing,
just natural,
is
right? That's rare, mate. I've got to give that to you.
I appreciate that, but the thing is, like, people only ever saw me when I was in that moment. All right, it's like we're recording this right before the Olympics start, but like, say for example, if you saw Ariana Titmus walking down the street, you'd be like, "Holy shit, she can walk!" Because you've only ever seen her swim. Fucking hell, man. So people only ever saw me when I was in this, oh man, fucking finally everything's quiet moment. All right. The other 23 hours was hard. And that's where things like alcohol and drugs and whatever else started getting into things to deal with that. I tip from the top, not a great way to deal with that. And I got very lucky that I didn't die. It got, to the point where, unfortunately the story's not an uncommon one, and I wish it had a different ending, but it had the same ending that every person ever tells this story does. Of like, I had it all and I drank it away. That's exactly what happened. Through the magic of divorce and alcoholic decisions and dumb investments with flea-brained ideas.
Let's start at the beginning. So you've got Australian Idol. You come onto that, and you're the face of that. So how did that? Do you remember sort of coming off of that thinking my whole life is going to change?
No. I just didn't. I was just holding on with both hands. It was just nuts. You've worked on big TV shows, but you mentioned you're a special forces operator. Like, people don't get that. Like, my mum was a civvy doctor in the military for 15 years, right? So I was at her base all the time, and people don't understand how much rehearsal goes on in the world of any kind of military operation. They will literally practice it every day for a year, so that when the window of opportunity opens, they're in and out in 16 minutes and 7 seconds, like a fucking Clooney film, right?
Precise.
And
precise.
it's they practice it and practice and practice and practice. So it's. Yeah, and the whole thing will fall apart if one person isn't in the right place at exactly the right time, and if everything isn't working perfectly, all right? And that's the same thing. When you're working on those big shows, there's like 115 people, and it's this perfectly choreographed dance between everybody, and it only works if everyone is doing exactly the best job of their life. And that is amazing to be a part of. It is. I might be one of the people in front of the camera, but there are easily over 100 people who are the very best in the business, and the only reason that any of us are there is because everyone else is there. And that's the only reason those show make it air. And it is just wonderful to be a part of something like that. Because especially when it's live, no one really does live anymore because it's a bit too expensive, but especially when it's live, the stakes are real high. And
I bet you love that though. I bet that's where you were in you like, if I mess up right now, then it's live, it's going out to millions of people.
That's what makes it so exciting. It's the best. There's nothing like it. It's the most fun you can have with your clothes on. It really is. It's just unbelievable. Because ultimately, what am I doing? What's my job? I think about it right now. Like I had to think about really carefully. What's my job? My job is to make people feel less alone. That's it. My job is that's it. Whether it's a podcast or the book I write or, any kind of TV that I make, it's to give people the feeling that there's other. I'm being connected with here down the lens, and it's something I work really hard at doing. And same with the podcast. It's something I work hard at doing. Vocally at least, to give people that sense of connection, that sense of intimacy. And what is entertainment ultimately? I don't make anything. I don't make a house. They're building a house next door to me. These guys get to the end of their day and go, fucking, that's a good wall, boys. Yeah, it's going to stand for 100 years. Yes, it will. I make waves of an electromagnetic spectrum that get thrown out into the air, never to be seen again. I trade in emotional responses. That's it.
Yeah,
I'm there to give an emotional reaction. There's a lot of work that goes into it, and people might think, what, you literally just read out loud for a living, especially if there's an auto cue involved. Like, if you want to break it right down, yes, possibly. Yet there's definitely ways of language and ways of addressing a camera and ways of using your voice and ways of the way you hold your body can change the experience of the person watching that and make them feel closer or further away from you. And I work really hard and I study that shit and I watch myself back and I make sure that I get it right, because ultimately I only get the job if I am the best choice at the time. And I know there's me 20 years ago just knowing I just have to go. That guy is breathing down my neck, man. And I work really hard to stay the undeniable choice when it comes to these things. All right. I don't accidentally get these jobs. They give these jobs to the best person because it's a business decision for them too. They want to give it to whoever's going to give us the best value, that's who we get. And I work fucking hard to make sure that I can stay that person. And which is nice because then it gives me something to do when the shows aren't
on.
And
when did the transition come, Osher, from Andrew G to Osher Günsberg? Was that Australian Idol? Did you go right?
I was kind of towards the end of that.
Myself.
It was kind of towards the end of that. It was towards the end of that. I was, look, I don't believe in an interventionist God. All right, I went to a school that tried to tell me there was hell and things like that, and then I actually went to the Middle East and went, hang on a second, what? It was 385 was when Helena Constantine stood here and pointed at a hole in the ground. So 350 years, and hang on, all the posters of this guy in my school, he was a white dude. I don't see any white dudes in Nazareth. What the fuck is this? So anyway, so I met this guy and we had this kind of interesting conversation. I met this shaman and I'm interested, all right? I'm interested. I'm not a convert, but I'm interested. I'm like, okay, there's something going on here. I don't know if it's what you say it is, but there's definitely something happening here. And so he told me if I change my name, I'd change my life. And I was like, all right then. If it can't help, can't hurt. And so privately I did it, I think 2009. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I think it was more to do with normative determinism, right? I think it was more to do with how I thought about myself. And certainly once I got sober, because it was a private thing, right, for a couple of years. But once I got sober, it was like, it really helped me delineate between the two versions of the person that I am, right? There's a point in I got sober using a 12-step program, which I thoroughly recommend. It worked for me. It doesn't work for everyone. And there's one of those steps is not unlike sitting with you in the tear gas tent. And, it's real hard, but you essentially, there's a searching and fearless moral inventory where you literally look at all the times that you've been pretty shit to yourself and to others. And then you have to tell it to another man. And you sit down and you are honest with him, and for the first time some of this stuff is coming out of your mouth like you thought you'd never thought you'd take it to the grave. But by doing that, what you're doing, and he amazingly, and you're able to do it for other people. I'd like to do it for somebody else one day. They say, cool, man, well, I'll carry that for now. I'll carry that so you don't need to carry it for now. And I was like, but how is anyone going to like me? How am I ever going to fall in love? How can I be with myself as this person that did these things? And he said, well, I got good news for you, pal. He's from Southern California. I got news for you, pal. You get to live the rest of your life not being that guy anymore. Oh, fucking awesome. And so as a way of part of those steps, one of those steps is to then go and make an amends and meet the people that you hurt and try what you can to make it better, unless it's going to cause them harm. And so there's a few people that I will never, go back into their orbits ever again for their own safety and their own good, because it wouldn't be right. And yet, though, I get to make amends to them by just living my life and making choices that were in the exact opposite direction of the choices I made, that were the ones that hurt myself and hurt people like them. And so giving the name gave me an opportunity to change how I looked at the world. But people ask me about this sometimes, and I think, well, I went to, in grade 3, Miss Smith said goodbye to us at the end of December. See you next year, kids. And Mrs. Carrington was there in grade 4. Same lady, different clothes, different way of walking through the world. She got married over the summer. There's one person in this world, and one person alone, that calls me a name that nobody else calls me. And because of the way this person calls me that name, it changes who I am as a person and changes what I value. And that name is Dad. So I would put it to you that there's a lot of people that change their names, and a lot of people that will understand what it is I'm talking about when they when they have that name Dad, or when they get married, or if they, choose to take a partner's name or whatever, particularly if you're a parent, mum or dad, changes how you feel about the world. When that name comes your way, not like, oh, fuck, come on, mate, you can wash your own ass. Not that. When it's like, what's trust, Dad? And I had to tell Wolf this morning about, he's 4.5. I'm like, okay, trust is, here we go. Just trying to tell him. And so, that's kind of why that was there. And it's been really useful. I thoroughly recommend it. I mean, Calvin Broadhouse is not in your playlist, but Snoop Dogg is. O'Shea Jackson is you don't know who that, you don't care, but he's actually on my desk. That's Ice Cube.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so what does Osher mean?
That's the Hebrew word for happiness.
Wow, that's super cool. You talked about the drugs and the alcohol. Was that at its worst post or pre Australian Idol? I
was, as someone who's struggled a lot with anxiety and various other things.
OCD as well.
Yeah, I was yet to discover that stuff, man. I was offered antidepressants when I was 25, when I'd been in Sydney for 6 months, and it was real bad. And I went to go see a doctor, and he said, yeah, this is what's going on for you. You need to be on antidepressants. I'm like, fuck that, man. I don't want to be the kind of guy that needs to take antidepressants. No, thank you. I'll just have a beer like a man.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And so, what happens to, untreated anxiety that you're self-medicating with alcohol? It just gets way worse. And so there was this one day about 7 years later, I had discovered by this point that physicality and moving my body made my head feel better, but literally I could not outrun it. At some point it gets so bad I can't outrun it. Nothing I can do can make my head feel any different. And I was running in the soft sand on Bondi. I don't know. I was like, it was a bad afternoon. So I was like 9 laps in. I was like going to do 10 Ks of soft sand that day. And I felt like someone had grabbed me around the throat and they had my fucking larynx in their hands. I felt someone touching my skin. There was nobody there. And I felt the constriction, the touch on I was like, fuck, this is bad. And I ran up the hill, got on the phone, and I called my doctor, and I went straight to his office. He could hear it in my voice. They stayed open. They let me in late. And And I begged, please give me the drugs. And they take a while. They would have worked had I not been still drinking, because all I did was just piss them out. But eventually it got so bad that I had to stop. And I got really lucky. It wasn't like one particularly massively humongous night. It was just another fucking night, right? But
Yeah.
but they had been getting progressively worse, and it had been a long time. I could not remember at all the last day I hadn't drank. It would have been years by that point. And it was no longer a choice for me to drink. It was like as if, for example, we're on fucking deep recon way in the Philippine jungle and a massive mozzie bites you on the forearm. And I say, man, if you slap that, you'll give away our position. But it's itching so badly you can't, and eventually go bang, because you can't not hit it, right?
Yeah.
And it's that, like, I didn't want to do this, but I was unable to not do it. It was like, so one of our kids has a peanut allergy, right? It's not anaphylactic, thankfully, but they can get really sick. Now, if I tell you, hey, Aunt, we're coming over, but one of the kids has a peanut allergy, there's no fucking way you'd get any peanuts anywhere near them, right? Because you can kill a child, right? So similarly, with the tiniest amount of a trace element of peanut will kill somebody. So similarly, a molecule of alcohol touches my body, touches my tongue, and I'll have an allergic reaction. And that allergic reaction, what it will do is it stops me. It changes how much I think is a good idea to drink, and also it changes my sense of right and wrong. And I will keep having this allergy. It's like if someone starts breaking out in hives because they brushed up against a plant or something.
Yeah.
You can't say, excuse me, can you please just stop breaking out in welts? They can't. Their body's just doing this thing. So I can't stop everything that is happening. I cannot stop that allergic reaction until the alcohol wears off, which is sometimes the next day, sometimes later. And so similarly, like if I have this allergy, like if I drink, I break out and fuckwit. Like similarly, not everyone's like this.
I love the way that you lay it out in layman's terms. It's almost a kick yourself moment. You're like, wow, that's me. The majority of the time when I drink, that's me when I do this. That's me when I do that.
I tried 1,000 different ways. I tried 1,000 different ways to try to make it end up better. But it was fun, and then it was fun with problems, and it was just problems. And I wasn't unable to stop it from happening. And I just kind of realized that there was that Lao Tzu line, I think, be careful of the direction you're headed. You may just end up there. And I just kind of woke up one morning going, I'm going to die if I keep doing this. I'll either get arrested or no matter what, I can't. Eventually, I'm going to forget, because I was toying. Prescription painkillers were a part of it. Benzos were a part of it. Like, I'm going to be that fucking guy that forgot he has already taken his Valium, and then have a couple more drinks and then go, oh yeah, I normally take Valium this time of night, and then oopsie-daisy, goodbye. And that's, and so I just realized I had to stop, but I couldn't. Again, I didn't want to be a guy that couldn't drink. So I had to trick my own brain to go, it's cool, man. We're just going to not drink until you have a responsible relationship with alcohol, all right? But it was only a couple of weeks and then I was like, oh, I can never do that again. Look, I know that if I had a drink today, it's been 14 years and 4 months or something like that. If I had a drink today, it won't be tomorrow, and it might not be next week, but I can guarantee you by Christmas, everything that I've built is gone. And I'm not willing to risk that. I'm not willing to do that, because I know I can't stop it once it starts.
Do you know what? And I think a lot of people should take this, I say warning, because there's a lot of people that actually go through that, but they go, oh, do you know what? I'm not going to let alcohol control me. Nothing can control me. And it's like, I love what you just said then. You know that if you start drinking, everything that you've built up to now comes crumbling down. And it's the same old fucking story, mate. It happens so many times. I've been there.
It sneaks out. It sneaks out. Like, there was a while there, because it sneaks out in other things, right? I was, at 6:15 a.m., I think. I'm sitting on the toilet on a fucking mobile betting app, putting a multi on a fucking horse that is going to run in Hong Kong. I was like, what the fuck am I doing tying this to a Singaporean table tennis thing? what on, like, so, like,
Yeah.
the profiteering of addiction in our country is just so shithouse, and it's just reprehensible how many billions of dollars are made off addiction. And all it is people who are, it's an avoidant behavior trying to, because the uncomfortable feelings are just too overwhelming. So I'd rather stimulate myself with this thing than deal with thinking about or work on what happened to me. There are billions of dollars getting taken out of people's grocery budgets on gambling and alcohol in this country, but fucking we don't care. And yet we get upset at people for being shit and, shit parents and spending all their money. And like, man, fuck you. There's so much pain. And there's way better ways to deal with it. But there's so much money being made out of that pain, Ant. So much money.
You say you use your career as a coping mechanism to battle this. Wow, that's
at the time,
that's
yeah,
strong,
it's very different
right?
now.
It's like, yeah.
It's very different now. It's very, very different now. Like before I got sober, that was it. I just wanted to reach for that moment. But then after getting sober, my man David, he's very much like, man, just chop wood, carry water, dude. Just fucking be a worker amongst workers. You don't have to be the super fucking star. Just be a guy that people can rely on, and everything else will work out. And he's right.
I think that's where you build trust, right? Is reliability.
Precisely
When you can rely on someone, that's where trust also is built. Oh, I can rely on this dude. He's going to turn up. He's going to give the best. He's going to put 100% into everything he does. There's no distractions. There's no, excuses. He's going to get on and do.
But it's also about
stuff.
being there for everybody else, right? The other 115 people that I mentioned. I came to the idea of like, if I can make everyone's day the easiest day they've ever had on set, and if I have them thinking that's the most professional guy I've ever worked with when they leave, then what that will make is that I will have done the very best I could have ever done. But I'm not doing it for me. I'm doing it for them. I'm doing it so
I can relate to that.
I've got my words all done. I know exactly how to get the right reaction out of somebody. I know exactly, I've spoken to the producers about what storylines we're following. I know who's, triangulated with who. I know where the emotion is. I know exactly where the cameras are. I know where the lights are. Bang, I hit it and I quit it. I'm in and out. All right, we're not doing it 17 times because we can't. Because excuse me, can you just cry once again, please? Because we fucked the line. Can you just pretend you got told you got broken up with, please? Can't do that. And it takes a lot of work, but if I'm doing it for everybody else on set, including the people who are watching, then that's way better. And it's not about me, but I end up benefiting from it because I end up doing
Absolutely, you do, Osher. And the proof is in the pudding because you were nominated for a Golden Logie. Let's talk about, I love your journey, and people don't realise the iceberg effect, what goes on underneath, all the hard work, sacrifice that we've spoken about. What was it like getting nominated for a Golden
to be
Logie?
honest, it was an extraordinary honour. And it was, again, who it is, there was not a hope in hell that would have ever happened, ever, had I not, got my shit together. Right? No fucking way. And trophy or no, who I became to be the person that got nominated for that thing, I get to keep forever, right? And that's nice.
Yeah, sort of come back full circle. That has almost proven that, wow, if I hadn't have done this and I haven't, changed the way that I am and who I am, then I wouldn't have got to this moment.
To look at to look at people like I can't compare myself to everyone who I got nominated with, but to look at people like Blake and McAuliffe, who are just amazing. Julia Morris, unfucking believably talented, right? To be seen in the same category, literally, as those guys is as good as it gets, right? But and I got to tell you that. Just because I stopped drinking and using and doing all that dumb shit doesn't mean that guy is still inside going, come on, man, he's a really good idea. Like, it's still there. You just find better ways to deal with it, right? And, we talk about practice, we talk about rehearsing, and we're in my office, right? I sat here and I practiced losing a Logie because what happens when you lose an award? They've got that fucking Schadenfreude camera up your nostrils. They're looking for the micro expressions of derision and hate. The little thing that flashes across your eyes and goes, oh, look, he's fucking gutted. No, I didn't want a second of that. at all, because anyone that stood there and held that thing in their hands would have deserved it, and I didn't want them to ever think it anyway. So I literally sat here at my desk behind me, and I would practice over and over again in my mind, imagining Hamish Blake. And then there's a kind of meditation that I like to do. It's called metta. It's called loving kindness meditation, where you truly wish nothing but the best for a person who might be, a bit of a shit in your life. Then I would sit there and I would just feel as hard as I could in my body just the true most amount of incredible, legitimate joy, because I know how much work it's taken me to get to this. They would have done exactly the same or more, and probably more because they won the fucking thing. So, God damn, good on you. You deserve that. And I kept doing it and doing it and doing it until I just truly connected with how wonderfully proud I was, every single one of these people. And so sure enough, when Daryl Summers came out and shouted Sonia Kruger at the top of his lungs, I'm so happy for her. That's what I got out of that. It's like, it was hard, man. I had to wrestle my ego to the ground, because it was like my brain would be writing acceptance speeches when I was, riding my bicycle. And I was like, and this is for you, Mr. Johnson in grade 9. Fuck you for ever telling me. It's like, that was all happening, man. Like, it was, and I was like, thanks, buddy. I'd have to literally say to those sorts, I appreciate that. Thank you. I'll take it as noted. But that's not going to happen. I appreciate that. I'll write it down. Thank you. The noise, man. Oh, my God. I would just laugh at it after a while. I'd be like, that's hilarious. You're really going to go – this thing's a 17-minute long speech by now. The orchestra, John Foreman's going to play it off. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
But I ended up – we had a great night. And we my wife and I danced. And then we went to bed, and she ate Kung Pao chicken at 3 a.m.
There you go. It doesn't get much better than that, mate. Happy with that. And one final question before I love you and leave you, mate. What is next for you? I know you're writing books, you've got your podcast, you're a mental health advocate, obviously because of the experience that you've been through.
Yeah,
giving back.
I think it's important that you can't be what you can't see, Ant. And, I remember when I first started, publicly talking about having experienced psychosis, people just couldn't fucking believe that it came out of my mouth, right? Because, look, I remember how much – I've already described this. There was self-stigma that stopped me from getting help, because I didn't want to be the kind of guy that needed help. And self-stigma that stopped me from – I'd tried to stop drinking a lot, but I didn't want to be the guy that had to stop drinking. So the only way that I ever got better was by hearing stories of other people that were once where I was and were now somewhere I wanted to be. And I was just trying to – that's why I started the podcast in 2013, just to I just want to be able to give what was given to me. And that's it. And so, yeah, I mean, we're at this really interesting time in broadcasting, man, where it's either the most terrifying time to be in broadcasting, or the most amazing time to be in broadcasting. And I have a particular set of skills. Are they useful to people who have multi-million-dollar broadcast licenses that they're trying to, create business models around leveraging for profit? Probably not right now. Does that mean that I'm not able to then create something? I mean, there's a few times in my life. I don't think I've ever – no. I'll describe one moment. There was another moment that happened later on. I've always swum out to the boat, man, always. The comet's not going to come by and take you on a fucking whirlwind trip through the galaxy if you're not in the path of the comet. Like, no one's going to come down my front pathway, knock on my front door and say, hey, man, you know that show you always wanted to host? It's ready. There's 300 people in the studio and there's 17 cameras and we're ready to go. No, you got to build it. And that's kind of how it was before Bachelor. I was unemployed. I was 40. I was unemployed. And I created a show and I sold the show to the network, and it was, in the dating space. And while I was producing that and getting ready to make that, they go, we just bought The Bachelor. You want to do that? Yes, I do. And so similarly, that's again where I am now. I'm in the point where I'm creating the next big TV job. The podcast is fucking great, and I'm able to do some – because now I'm no longer how do we put this out? There's clauses in contracts that mean you won't – I think the word is disrepute. So I'm able to cover some different stuff now, which is nice.
Now you're free.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's very much it's an opportunity to – the gigs that I've done, and I'd like, I've never been, they've never been about me, the shows that I work on. I'm just literally there for exposition. I'm there to lay pipe, man. And that's it. Those jobs, I'm not a part of the artwork. I'm not on the side of the bus, I'm just the guy that's there to drop the business and then give the reasons as to why this thing's important, and then I fuck off.
Well, you do an outstanding job with it, mate. And your career has certainly led you to these moments.
I appreciate that.
I love it. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining me on Head Game. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any of our incredible stories, and leave me a review wherever you're listening. I'm Matt Middleton. Catch you again next time.